Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And boy, oh boy, is it good to be back. DJ, you know what to do. You gotta fade us all the way out so we can talk to the people. Oh my goodness. January 17th, 2026, episode 196. Ladies and gentlemen, it is good to be back. We most definitely have been on a break. Listen, life was lifing. Life was lifing, man. Life was lifing. The last time I was able to speak to you here was August 6th last year, 2025. And I apologize for being away. You know what's really dope? The amount of people that have reached out to me over the past couple of months and was like, yo, we get we could watch you on YouTube, we could see you on TV, and you got the radio show, but yo, what about the podcast? When is the podcast coming back? And it's always dope because even though, you see the numbers, right? You see how many people are listening to the podcast and where everybody's tuning in from. But you don't always realize, just how, after you've built something, you don't realize, how important it has become to other people, So now it's, this what started off as just kind of like an outlet has now become a daily part of hundreds of you around the world. I'm not saying hundreds, thousands of you. What am I saying? Thousands of you around the world. This is the podcast that you lock in and you tune into. So for all the messages over the past couple of months, thank you for reaching out. Again, podcasting has always been one of my favorite mediums and forms of expression because I just love the fact that I can get behind the mic. I'm in my comfort zone. I'm talking to you, and this is a space where I could just be me and we could just have conversations, and we don't gotta sugarcoat nothing. We can just talk how we talk. When you are building or you're doing things on platforms that you don't own, you got to play by everybody else's rules, right? You can't just get on social media and say whatever you want or do whatever you want. Same thing if you're in media, you can't just get on the media platforms and wild out, But when you have your own space, your own corner of the interwebs, you get to kind of do your thing and cut loose. And let me tell you something. Last episode would have been in August, right? And from August, life has just been, a blur. And a blur in a good way. September, pretty much most of September, I was in China. So I was brought there with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China with 50 other people from across Latin America and the Caribbean. They flew us out there for about 17 days, and we explored all over China, right? Coming back from, that coming back from that, I had to go right into condo hunting. Right? So my lease was up before the trip to China. And again, that China trip just kind of came out of nowhere. But my lease was up before that. I had to go move all of my stuff in storage. Went and did China, had an amazing time. There was a lot of stuff that happened after that. And then when I got back to Thailand, I had to go right into condo hunting. So from condo hunting, then family, friends flew in. So my mom and a group of friends, they all flew in, and a couple of other people, a couple of other my friends flew in for November. So November was just pace with my mom, and then pace with a couple of friends. And then lo and behold, in November, I get a call that they want me back in Trinidad. And before you know it, I'm jumping on a plane at the beginning of I think December 1st, jumped on a plane and went back to Trinidad. And then I ended up spending the last month in Trinidad, and I only just came back from Trinidad a couple of days ago. So it's been, again, a lot's been happening, a lot of good stuff. And I mean, we'll definitely get into that, as we continue on in the podcast. There's been so many changes. There's been so many changes that, I've been going through and just rethinking, everything that I'm doing. And again, I'll take some time and I'll get into those things over the next couple of episodes. But I want to put this out there first. There's going to be a shift in Digipreneur, right? And I think the last couple of months, everything needed to happen exactly how it happened. I was able to just do a lot, see a lot, and have a lot of conversations, see a lot of different things. Like the past couple of months have been really, really good for me, and again, just a huge learning experience. And I think the new direction that Digipreneur as an entire brand, podcasts, columns, the segments in CNC3, everything has kind of been shifting over the last year, where now I'm not just limiting the conversations to marketing. Now we're getting into, digital business. We're getting into lifestyle business. We're getting into really exploring what the digital world has to offer and how the digital world can help us navigate so many of the challenges that we are facing today, right? Digital literacy across the Caribbean region is something that we haven't really pushed collectively from the top down. We really haven't pushed digital literacy to where we need to be. And typically, when you do see workshops or classes being done to kind of help people surrounding digital literacy, it's still stuff from many, many years ago. How to set up an email, how to send an email, how to change your password, how to create a Google account. And I mean, there's obviously going to be a need for those, because there are some people that are coming from, different backgrounds, different communities, who have just, maybe they've been, whatever the situation is, they just haven't been exposed, right? So there's going to be a space for that. But what we really need to happen is digital literacy today in 2026 looks so much differently, and there's so many things to really get into. So where my brand is going is, the brand is going to be less about marketing, and we're really going to be focusing on digital business, technology, lifestyle, and we're going to see where this goes, right? And I think, again, the past couple of months have been great. One of the things that came out of China, that last trip to China, even the trip before that, because I went to China twice, in June and then in September. Out of both of those trips, you were just seeing how the intersection of artificial intelligence, machines, humanoid robotics, you are seeing all of these things come to life, and they're changing everything that we do. And even though we in the Caribbean are we're behind in so many aspects, there are things that are happening around the world that are impacting us as is right now, right? But we don't really have the spaces to talk about the digital world, digital business, lifestyle, like digital lifestyle, um, technology. We don't really have a lot of those spaces. So where my brand is going is, coming out of China, I realize I'm being put in so many positions where I get to see the intersection of all of these things and how it's impacting us, how it's changing things. And I get to be that bridge. So I want to focus more on being that bridge between the digital world and the Caribbean and different parts of the world, because I'm in Asia right now, being that bridge between the Caribbean and Asia, because there's so many things for us to learn, there's so many opportunities for us that we could tap into. But again, you would never know about it because we really don't have these spaces to learn about these things and have these conversations, right? So, from a personal perspective, I'm still a digital marketer, right? I still provide digital marketing services, and I'm going through my own planning of how I kind of want to do all of the things that I want to do. I know that my KarenRose.com website, that's been the home for pretty much almost every kind of conversation, tutorials, teachings. That's been my go-to space to get most of my content out. That's going to be changing too, because effectively what is going to be coming out, and I'll let you guys know at a date, soon enough, but I've started the process of working on it. Is, you see how there's entrepreneur.com and there is Business Insider? We don't have that for our region, right? We don't have that for our region. And in talking to people over the past couple of months, just asking them, like, where do you go to get Caribbean business content, Caribbean tech content, Caribbean lifestyle content, but lifestyle from a business and technology perspective, not, again, I'm just making that distinction. And, long and short, we don't really have dedicated spaces, and people just kind of, piece together what they can find on social media. Also, what may get talked about in the media, and hopefully, if something we do is big enough and it makes it to the BBCs or the CNNs, you get some some Caribbean information there. But again, we don't really have that dedicated space. So just imagine what entrepreneur.com is and what Business Insider is. That is where Digipreneur is going. We want to now be that space for all things digital business, digital technology, digital lifestyle content. And that encompasses, so many different aspects of the digital world. Again, this conversation is going beyond marketing now. Now we're talking about designing lifestyles, right? So when you hear me talking about digital nomadism, it's not, we're not talking about it from something that is a fad or just something cool to do. Now we're talking about these things from a lens of survival, right? There's so many new opportunities for us, that are popping up everywhere, and we just don't have the spaces to really talk about it. So digipreneur.com is going to kind of be like what you would have seen in entrepreneur.com and Business Insider. But I'm going to be that. It's going to be that for the Caribbean, right? So that is where the focus is going to be. KarenRose.com is going to be more so like my personal journey, but then also when I want to talk, marketing strategies, because I still want to, provide marketing services for people and whatever the case is, it's going to be over there. But you see, when we're talking about digital nomadism, when we're talking about, getting bank accounts and digital currency, when we start talking about all of those things, those are going to be conversations that are going to be shifting over to the Digipreneur platform. So that's, the long and short for where Digipreneur is heading. The podcast is going to be a major role in that. We still have the Digipreneur columns in Jamaica Observer and TT Newsday. Hopefully, something works out where TT Newsday doesn't close down, but we'll see how that goes. And I mean, if it does happen, we'll work on our pivot, right? But yeah, I just wanted to give you a bit of an update as to, where I've been, what's been going on, where the direction of Digipreneur as a brand is going. We really want to focus, and I'm saying we, but it's really me. And, who knows who comes along for the journey moving forward, right? But the goal really is now we need to think bigger, or at least I want to solve a very different problem. So for most of the years, you would have known me for creating content around challenges that we are specifically facing in TNT or in another island. And I'm showcasing, ways to get around these things. And, that was all well and good. And from time to time, maybe, from time to time, we still might do some type of content like that. But for me, the focus now is on being that bridge between the Caribbean and the digital world, and, being that bridge between the Caribbean and Asia, right? Really showcasing what opportunities there are for us on the global scale. That's really where I'm going to be focusing this year. So there's a lot to come, so expect that shift. And that was my whole preamble, but I think it's about time we get into today's episode. So today's episode, and again, this is all part of the new direction. We are thinking about the digital world. There are so many opportunities and things that we don't know about, that we need to know about and have discussions on within the Caribbean context. So today's conversation is a very important one, and it's one that is already happening across the world, but for the most part, it's not happening here at home in the region. You see, around the world, people are actively discussing second passports, long term visas, and legal pathways to be able to move across borders. Governments are redesigning their entire immigration systems. Investors are planning more for mobility, and professionals are now thinking about access in a very deliberate way. Yet, in our region, in the Caribbean, this is still a topic that we are not touching. And it still feels taboo when you bring it up. At least that's how people try to make you feel when you start talking about, migration and these types of things, visas and passports. We tend to stay away from these conversations. But here's the thing. What makes this moment different is that passports and visas are no longer just about travel. I want you to stick with me on this point. They now determine access to resources, access to markets, access to financial systems, and access to opportunities. So, your passports are no longer just for travel. Visas are no longer just for travel. When you think about it, when you need to be able to get into some of these countries, or you want to do something, you want to open up bank accounts depending on the country, the first thing we tend to think about is, do we have any legal grounds? What do we need? So a lot of countries around the world, when you have either a passport for their system, it gives you passports, give you access, citizen benefits. But even visas allow you to access a lot of different services within that particular country. So whether you can open a bank account, operate a business, work legally, transit through countries, or reposition yourself during economic disruption increasingly depends on the documentation you hold, i.e., the passports and your visas. And in other parts of the world, this is already something that is understood, which is why we're having, or at least we're seeing the conversations happening globally, but we locally across the region, we're just not touching this subject. And in the Caribbean, we still think of passports as just things you need for a vacation and not necessarily a strategic asset. And this disconnect matters because the global environment has become far more volatile. I bet many of you really thought that Trump wasn't going to do anything to President Maduro, right? We had so many people on the ground that were still believing that US was just posturing and they're just trying to show a force, nothing was going to happen, and boom, we wake up, all of a sudden the president has been removed forcibly from his bed. He was having a feast the night before, and the next morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's been forcibly removed from his bed with his wife. We didn't have that in the bingo cards, right? So the world has become increasingly more volatile, and immigration rules are changing quickly, and we have seen that. Think about what happened just a couple of days ago. The U.S. made a big announcement. They paused the immigrant visas from 75 countries. That's huge. That is massive because the U.S. understands, or at least the U.S. is banking on, but what they largely understand is they have the most profitable market in the world. So you want to play in their market, there's going to be a premium, and they control the access. This is all about controlling access to who has controlling access to who can benefit from their resources. And again, what did the White House say? The White House said they did this because when they looked at all of the data from the public from the public purse that's fueling social programs, they looked at where all of the immigrants are coming from and which countries have a higher percentage of people taking from the quote unquote public purse or the taxpayers' dollars, and they put visa bans on processing from 75 countries. That's how quickly these things can change. And that impacts your income, it impacts your mobility, it impacts business continuity, and guess what? It also even impacts personal safety. People elsewhere around the world are planning for these realities, but again, we are still not thinking about it like this. So it's also important to say clearly what this conversation has to be about. We are not talking about just migrating for migrating sakes and abandoning home, abandoning your identity or responsibility. No, we're not. I'm not even trying to scare you into something, but the reality is we are seeing all of these things play out. Trump taking Maduro, this is no longer speculation. It happened. Now he's making mention of Greenland. So again, I'm saying all of these things because you need to understand that it's not it's not just another day in paradise anymore. It's not just another regular working day. Real things are happening around us that are going to have major impact. And we need to start paying attention because again, we are an island. We're a small island developing state. We are going to feel the impacts greatly. So now we got to start being more strategic and start planning for things that are changing and that have already changed. And one of the most important things to understand about just the world that we are living in today is now that the rules around movement didn't just change loudly, right? There was no single one announcement. There was no big global memo. There was no moment where governments collectively said, you know what, this is exactly what we're going to do. Instead, what has happened is that things have been shifting very quietly, very so subtly, right? And then you realize, wait a minute, these things actually have big impacts, policy by policy, country by country. Immigration systems that once were predictable are now being rewritten in real time. Think about that shock. that we got earlier last year when we were just going about our merry business, and all of a sudden you hear that the UK has now slapped a visa restriction on Trinidad and Tobago. And then when you actually saw the fees to even apply for the visa, you're like, holy hell, what is going on? And again, these things matter because even if you are trying to transit through the US or the UK, you still need a visa for these things, right? Now, we are seeing these changes happening all over the world. But what is driving these changes? And countries are trying now to optimize. And how are they doing this? You have to keep in mind that countries are facing aging populations, shrinking workforces, rising healthcare costs, and increasing competition for talent and capital. So, immigration has become a lever to solve economic problems. Governments are no longer asking, how open we should be. No, they're asking, what do we need? What do they bring? And what does it cost us to support them? And this marks a major move away from the openness that we have been accustomed to, more towards selectivity. Because now immigration systems are being redesigned to prioritize specific skill sets, income levels, investment capacity, and demographic profiles. And we have been seeing this over the past couple of years. Look, the US just the other day made the announcement that they're now having a golden passport, 5 million US dollars, and you can now invest and you can become a US citizen. We are seeing Caribbean countries all around the region, Grenada, St. Croix, Martinique. We have seen a number of Caribbean nations that have their visa by investment or passport by investment programs, or I shouldn't say that, citizenship by investment programs. So we are seeing these things happening all over the world. And again, immigration systems are being redesigned. So you're seeing new visas coming out that are asking for specific skill sets. They know how they want to build their country. They're like here in Thailand and Vietnam, they have something called the talent visa, and they have a laundry list of skill sets that they are looking for, that they will give you a visa if you're going to relocate to their country, because they need those types of skill sets within their economy. So now you have countries prioritizing engineers over general labor. They're prioritizing capital over numbers, tax contributors over dependents. Think about what the White House has said this week. They paused 75 countries' immigrant applications because these countries are sending in the bulk of their immigrants are coming and they're taking from the taxpayers' dollars. And that is where their justification is coming from. What they want is they want people that can contribute. That's why they're selling the passport. You have 5 million US? Great, we'll give you citizenship. For 5 million, we'll give it. And they've been making their money. They have talent visas, all so that they can import talent coming in to continue to help them build their countries and build their economies. What countries do not want is they don't want people to be coming into their country who are now going to be a burden on the public purse. So that is why now everybody is redesigning their immigration policies. That way they can get the right people into their countries. And in this new model as to how they're doing it, access isn't evenly distributed. It is calibrated now. And as a result, borders are no longer just physical lines on a map. They function as economic filters, and they determine who can legally earn, who can legally bank in the country, who can invest in the country, who can stay long enough to build something meaningful, and who can transit efficiently through their countries. Losing access in one place often has major ripple effects far beyond that single country. Think about it. If you do not have a US visa and you do not have a UK visa, think about how much of the world is now closed off to you simply because you don't have a transit visa to the US or a transit visa to the UK. How are you going to be able to navigate the world? What if you need banking in a particular country, not the US or the UK, but the only way to get to that country is you have to transit through the UK or the US. You know what I mean? So these things all function as economic filters now. And because they can determine, who can bank here, who can invest, who can earn, and how long you can stay, this is why losing access, not having visas, not having the right passport has major effects, especially in today's society. And this is the key shift that many people haven't absorbed as yet. Access is no longer automatic. It is conditional. It's being evaluated, and it can be withdrawn and repriced at any time. And in a world like this, waiting until you need access is way too late. Think about it. If you do not have a US visa, whether it's a transit visa, it could be a transit visa, and you need to go and use the US to go to a different country for medical purposes. You not being able to access the US, even as a transit hub, or the UK as a transit hub, far limits you. And here's why we in the Caribbean are feeling this, and we're feeling the impact first, and we're feeling it intensely. Because by definition, the Caribbean operates with less margin for error. Smaller populations means a narrower tax base, limited natural resources, and heavy dependence on external markets means that any time there is a shock happening in the world, like a president being removed from his bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, anytime shocks are happening elsewhere, they rarely stay external for long. And decisions made in other countries like the US, the UK, China, often land on our doorstep faster than we can adjust. And as a small island developing state, Caribbean economies are exposed. Think about it. We rely on imports for food, energy, medicine, technology, goods. We depend on foreign exchange inflows from tourism, from remittances from friends, family, companies from outside of our region, and external services. Heck, even your streaming service, Netflix, cloud storage. Think about all of the services that we use. None of it originates in the Caribbean. So we are reliant on the external markets for pretty much any and everything. And there's very little buffering that is happening when these shocks happen. So this is why global migration or global immigration changes. It matters more than you realize, because when visa rules tighten, it's no longer just about the travel inconvenience. It affects transit routes. It affects business access. It affects education pathways. If you're going to school abroad and you all of a sudden lose your visa access, or an immigration policy is changed, we have seen so many of that, our friends and family being impacted. And they don't know what they're going to do, because the countries that they are studying, the immigration policies with our country is shaky. Think about how many people going to school in the UK. Those changes mattered. The changes with the US visa situation, all of these things matter. And we are seeing just how vulnerable we are. Now, keep in mind, here in Trinidad, we have a very unique problem. And this is because we're not generating the amount of money that we used to make. And because we're not generating enough money and we still have, a high expenditure, our foreign exchange reserves are tightening and costs are rising dramatically. And when global demand slows, layoffs follow. Think about all of the layoffs that we have been seeing happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Think about the company Nutrient. Think about what's going on with NGC. We are seeing companies pulling out of Trinidad in real time. And all that spells is layoffs. And when governments have to keep borrowing externally, repayment pressures also are going to shape domestic policy. And when immigration rules change abroad, like visa restrictions, higher fees, transit requirements, it is us, the ordinary people, who are suddenly, all of a sudden, boxed in, even if we never planned to migrate. And the challenge is that small states don't get to opt out of global shifts. We are forced to absorb them. We either have to adjust or we fall behind. And we see how that's been playing out, right? And this is why relying on one economy, one labor market, and one passport is becoming increasingly risky. And not because, our countries don't have value, far from it, but because the world has become less forgiving on concentration. And this is where mobility stops being a lifestyle choice and becomes a form of risk management. Because guess what? For us in the Caribbean, access to external markets and the systems and opportunities, that is what is going to be stabilizing our countries. And in a world that's fragmenting and repricing access, those who understand this early can start to build resilience, and those who are left reacting to changes they didn't cause and couldn't control. And this is why, you see, visas, when we speak about looking at secondary passports and visas, this is no longer about travel. Because in our region, visas were viewed almost exclusively through the lens of just travel. You wanted to go to the US or the UK, whatever the case is. We only ever speak about visas just to usually go and see, friends and family that have migrated to the US, Canada, and the UK. And typically to this day, those are still really the main three countries that we frequent, right? So we would go there to check family, we go to the shop, and again, that's typically what we've been using visas for. What we need to start doing, is we need to understand. You see these visas and passports, they are not just for travel, and they have a bigger responsibility for us, because today your visas and your passports that you hold determine far more than where you can vacation. They can affect where you transit, where you work, where you're allowed to study, where you can go and bank or open up bank accounts, and where you plan to build long-term plans. So losing a visa is not just going to, you can't just vacation there. It can quietly block access to an entire region of the world, because so many global routes, systems, and institutions are built around a small number of powerful hubs. Let me give you an example. If you want to open up a personal US bank account, you cannot do that online. They'll give you the bank. They'll give you a bank account. You don't need to be a citizen of the US to open up a bank account. You could open up a non-citizen's bank account. But here's the thing. For personal accounts, you have to physically go to the US. You have to physically go there. So you don't have that visa. You can't go and bank in one of the biggest markets in the entire world. Which means you're going to have to start looking at other countries, because again, we in Trinidad, we're navigating some real things. Right now, if you are in Trinidad and Tobago and you open up a local USD account, because our country is spending way more than we are making. They have capped all of our access to US dollars. And because the world trades in US dollars, if we do not have access to US dollars, we cannot pay for things beyond what is on our shores, right? So if you have a local US account and you get paid by a company, they wire you some money, they put $1,000 in your local US account, the banks will not give you access to that US to that US that you just generated. We don't have that policy. They pretty much are just holding your funds ransom. So what's happening now is because people are not able to get access to their own US that they're putting in their local US accounts, they no longer trust the local banks. So they're opening up bank accounts in different parts of the world and they're parking all of their foreign exchange in outside markets. Again, if you do not have a passport or a visa to access these markets, think about how that is handicapping you. So again, this is why the conversation, we're having today's conversation on passports and visas, because we are not discussing this at all. We are not thinking about passports and visas from a strategic standpoint, from a standpoint of access to markets, access to resources. And right now, one of the top questions I get asked every single day is, Karen, I need to get paid in US dollars, but I need to be able to keep the US dollars. Well, what are you going to do? If you don't have a visa to go and jump across in the US, or you don't have, because there's other Caribbean banks that would allow you to open up a US account, but they require a certain amount of an investment to open up some of these accounts. There's one bank in St. Lucia where to open up a US account with them, you got to deposit 2,000 US. Well, in Trinidad, you're not even getting that to go and make that deposit, right? So we need to start thinking about passports and visas from a standpoint of access to resources, because with all of the challenges that we have going on in the Caribbean, we need as much access to resources, to systems, to infrastructure that we simply do not have in the Caribbean. So these passports and visas, the paradigm shift that we need to have is we need to stop thinking about them strictly from a place of travel. And we need to understand that having a secondary passport, doing the investment, the citizenship by investment, or looking at countries, looking at their new visa programs, this is about access. Access to systems, access to economies, access to optionality. And in a world where movement is being filtered and priced, the visas you hold or don't hold, or the passports you hold or don't hold, are going to shape how you freely can respond to change. So just imagine, right? We here in Trinidad and Tobago just went through this attack on Venezuela where the president was removed. Let's just say that spilled into something bigger. And we have seen for months that the Venezuelan government was threatening Trinidad and Tobago, saying that if anything happens to them, something is going to happen to us. Right now, it doesn't look like it's going to play out that way, but humor me. Let's just say they had every intention to action those threats, right? If you don't have secondary passports, if you don't have any kind of visa, whether it be for the US or the UK, right? You don't heck, even if you don't even have the CSME certificate, just for interregion access. If you don't have these things in place, then where do you go and what do you do when we are now facing all these problems and there's a potential of an attack? Again, like if they were serious about that attack, how are you going to be able to protect yourself and protect your family? How are you going to be able to navigate? So again, we need to start thinking about visas and passports as access to infrastructure. So once you can stop looking at them as just travel documents, right? Being something more than just, what we would show at the airports, and we start looking at these things like infrastructure, just like we would, bank accounts, for example. If you start viewing your passports and visas infrastructure, this is what is going to allow you to access the tools and resources that you are going to need in order to navigate 2026 moving forward. There are many of you that are going to school abroad and have every intention of coming back home, or maybe you're even taking your upskilling locally in Trinidad and Tobago, and you're coming out with your degrees, coming with your knowledge, but you can't find a job, you can't find a place to ply your trade. Well, you don't just want to sit there and waste your hard-earned education, all the time you spent in learning that skill. No, you're going to want to put yourself in the best possible scenario to give yourself options. So whether that is you're looking at remote opportunities, or whether you are looking at countries where your skill set has a lot of viability, and now you can start looking at different visa programs in order to go across and access that particular market so you can get into your field. Again, countries are coming up with talent visas. They're laying out exactly what skill sets they are looking for. And they're telling you, hey, if you have these skill sets, we need you. So this entire episode, if we have to sum it up, is going to be about access and what your visas and your passports give you. And this is no longer something that should be taboo. We were having this discussion on radio yesterday, and there was a lady that messaged us, and she was like, I don't like the fact that you keep speaking about migration. I don't like that you keep on recommending migration. And what I need to remind people, whether you stay in Trinidad, whether you stay in Jamaica, whether you stay in Barbados, you can stay in the Caribbean. But you need to understand where the opportunities are globally. So if you're staying in the Caribbean, are you upskilling? So that way you can now go and work for companies abroad, even if it's remotely. Are you taking a look around the world and understanding what countries have rolled out what visa programs? So that way, if you need to get into a respective industry and space, you can understand what your options are. So you know if it's okay, if I'm going to stay here and do this, or if I'm not getting through locally, then where can I go and ply my trade? What are my options? And it's passports, visas, work permits, understanding the new economics and the new ways that we have to navigate this world that we are in today. This is something that we all have to start being cognizant of. Because if we do not, we are going to be in for a very, very, very long ride in our region. Because you are seeing all of these countries redesigning their immigration systems. They want to attract talent. They want to attract investors. They want to attract skilled people. We are seeing immigration policies being, canceled or put on pause or becoming, more stringent. They want bonds. They're increasing fees so that they could, filter out people that typically are going to come across there and they believe are just going to be a burden on their public systems, whether it be the public health or the public purse. We got to start getting strategic because we do not have everything we need to navigate the world that we are in today. We don't have everything in the Caribbean. we need access to outside markets. And we need to start understanding what countries offer what benefits, you know, what visas offer access to what passports are going to unlock new opportunities for me and my family to be able to navigate today's world that we are in. So even for me, I have two passports. I have my Canadian passport, I have my Trinidad passport, right? And the thing is, I always like to do everything on my Trinidad passport because my goal is, again, to be that bridge and to show people that everything that I am doing, you can do too. I am using every single thing that you have, right? So I use my Trinidad passport for everything. I also picked up the destination Thai visa, the 5 year visa, whatever the case is. I have that 5 year visa that gives me access to Thailand for 5 years. So you see how this is working out. I have access to Canada, I have access to Trinidad, and now I have access long term to Thailand. Now, what am I going to start doing? I'm going to start looking at different countries and seeing how investment or citizenship by investment works. What are some of the fees? What goes on in those things? So I could understand what country has an easy pathway to pick up a third passport and what type of access that is going to give me. And then on a lesser scale, I'm going to start looking at different visa types, right? So if there is a 5 year visa in a South American country, I'm going to look at what the requirements are and potentially get them because I am seeing where the world is going, and you need to have access and mobility at all times. If something is happening, so you see, if something was happening in Trinidad, many of you can't even leave the island, right? One, because we don't have foreign exchange, so many of you would have been caught, not being able to purchase tickets for you and your family to get off the island. But then for the ones that don't have a U.S. visa or UK or a UK visa, you're limited in what you can do. And I'm not saying you can't go to the other Caribbean islands, right? But that again, you're limited in what you can do and how you can respond to changes. So when you have a US visa, I have a US visa, I have a Thailand visa, I might have to go in and pick up a UK visa to throw into my Trinidad passport, whatever the case is. Because again, I like to show that everything I'm doing can be done by our fellow Caribbean citizens, right? So I'm gonna go look at a UK visa. Again, I'm gonna be looking at multiple visas because I understand that today visas and passports are keys. They are keys to give us access. And in order to be from the Caribbean, we need access to as many external resources as possible so that we can properly navigate the challenges that we are having. Think about, I can't listen to me. If I did not get my US bank account, my Wise account, if I did not put these things in place, I would not be able to live outside of Trinidad because I would have no mechanism to be able to sustain me outside of Trinidad. So my focus has been over the years on getting as many clients outside of TNT so I could earn US dollars. And that way that gives me greater access. And then I learned as many ways as possible to convert TT dollars and use different tools to convert that money into US dollars so I could move my money outside of Trinidad to give me access and mobility. Think about that. If I never told people about Wise, if I never told people how to set up their PayPal or how to set up the Bank of America or these things, think about what your situation would be and how restrictive doing business in the Caribbean would be. Because many people only even know about Wise or setting up their PayPal account because they've been able to follow me. But I had to go and figure all these things out because if I did not have PayPal, if I didn't have Payoneer, if I didn't have Wise, I would not have been able to properly navigate the digital world and the spaces I'm in, I would not be able to navigate and survive outside of TNT because Trinidad and Tobago dollars only works in Trinidad. As soon as you leave the island, the money it can't be converted. We can't use it anywhere else. We're financially trapped in Trinidad unless you are generating an outside currency or know how to convert TT dollars into any other currency that could be used globally. So this is why, top of the year, again, new direction. It's adjacent. But we're really going to be focusing on the digital world, digital business, technology, lifestyle, and these types of conversations. We're going past the marketing conversations. All right. We need to start thinking about passports and visas as a part of strategic assets. That way, if you need to be able to be mobile, you know how you can be mobile. Because again, no US visa, no UK visa limits how you can move. Heck, if you have to go through KLM in Amsterdam to go and access other markets, KLM is expensive. You might not even be able to afford using to go through KLM. But you would have to do that if the US or the UK is blocked off to you. So all of these things are now conversations that we need to start having. What are the easiest countries or the processes to get secondary passports? And what are the countries that have visas that give us access to their markets? So that way we can look at these things and now we can decide, all right, you know what? I think I need to go and make the investment. I need to have the US visa. I need to have the UK visa. I need to have a visa over here. Let me go and pick up that 5-year Thailand visa. Let me go and pick up a visa in Colombia or Brazil. You got to think about it from that strategic lens. Because when you have the visas, it gives you legal standing to be in countries long term. So I can be, my visa for Thailand is 5 years. I can be in Thailand legally. I'm going to be here for the next 5 years. And then I would renew if I want to renew. All right. So it gives you access to stay in countries longer. Yes, which is good because if you need to be able to move or navigate, you're going to have some of these things in place, right? Even as a backup. And then they also give you access to opening up bank accounts. Like, again, many of the visas around the world, even if it's not passports, because passports are going to give you citizenship benefits, but many of the visas for countries around the world at least give you the ability to go open up bank accounts and set up shop in these countries. Okay, so that's that's our opening episode for 2026. We're going to be diving into these types of conversations more. We're moving beyond just, marketing. We're diving in heavier on digital business, digital as a lifestyle, technology is the lifestyle. We're diving in deeper on these conversations. And I have so much that I have planned and I want to do. And, I'm going to be bringing you all over wherever I'm going. You're coming with me. So we're going in heavy. We're getting back on our podcast. Think of this as season 2. If you're a One Piece fan, that should be funny because quote unquote, season 1 of One Piece was like almost 1,200 episodes. And then Oda's like, all right, we're going to do season 2 now. But 195 episodes in, started in 2021, I believe, or 2022, one or the other. And it's been such an amazing journey right here on the Digipreneur FM podcast. And like I said, I needed to, life happens, and this was a space where this was never not gonna come back. It was always gonna come back. But now there's new direction. There's more things I want to do. So YouTube is going to be a big part of what I do this year. I want to do a lot more video content. And then the podcasting is going to be here. We ain't playing with that. Digipreneur is going to be firing on all cylinders in every format because there's just so much that I want to bring, so much I want to share. There's so much that we need to learn and we need to see if we have any chance of navigating the challenges that are here upon us. All right. But the good news is that there are ways out. What are you willing to do, though? You can't be willing to stay the same. Your plans and how you approached things, how you approached life, in 2024 and 2025 can't be how you approach things in 2026. We live in a very, very different world, and we are going to have to discover this together and learn about what success looks like in today's day and age, and what are the tools, what are the things we need to know. If it was one thing I would say is, spending the last month in Trinidad, I got stopped every single day. Every single day I went out the house, I got stopped by somebody, from young to the old. It was amazing because of the conversations that we had. And everybody, from people that stopped me in their 20s to people that stopped me in their 70s, everybody was questioning lifestyles. Karen, there are no jobs. We want to change jobs. We want to future-proof ourselves so we don't become redundant. What should we be focused on learning right now? And then others are also asking the questions as to, hey, we want to go experience a new country. We want to go and get into our field in a different country because it's not popping here. What are those opportunities outside of the world? So both sides of that equation I love. There are people that want to be here but want to be able to tap into external markets for work and for clients. That's exactly where I think everybody, or as many people, should be focusing on. How do I live in the Caribbean but get paid in a higher currency? How do I get clients? How do I get job opportunities in other markets and I'm getting paid in a higher currency? That is what I think many of us need to be focusing on for those that are staying in the region. And then for others, understand that there are so many opportunities outside of the region. And the most important thing is going into these opportunities abroad, gaining new perspectives, seeing new cultures, seeing up close and personal how companies abroad or cultures abroad solve problems within your respective space. And that lived experience that you are going to have, that knowledge that you are going to receive, those perspectives, that is what's valuable to build in the Caribbean when you start to bring that back into our region and start to seed that information and that knowledge into our space. That is how we are going to grow. It's twofold. It's twofold. If you're staying, start learning how we can tap into global opportunities. And again, we're going to be discussing that. And then also, not everybody can stay. Many of us are skilled and need to start tapping into opportunities outside of our region. Tap into those opportunities. They're there for you. Go and compete. We have some amazing talent. We have some trainees in some high places in companies, from Facebook to NVIDIA, you name it. We have the talent. Some of us got to stay, some of us got to go, but we have to change how we do things. All right? So I hope today's episode was enlightening for you. Don't forget to check out you'll get the podcast on YouTube. You'll get it on the Digipreneur.fm website and all across on any podcast directory that you want to tap in and listen to on, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify. If you are listening on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, don't forget to like the podcast, drop your comments, drop your reviews. Those continue to help grow the Digipreneur family podcasts all over the world. So that being said, I hope today's episode I hope today was beneficial and fruitful for you, and I hope it gave you something to think about. All right. So I will see y'all in the next one, and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karan Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karan Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.